My name is Emily, and I am 32 years old. My life is very quiet. Every morning, I wake up at 7 a.m., drink a cup of coffee, and go to my office. I work at a big desk with a computer and a lot of paper. My job is not bad, but every day feels the same. I often look out the window and wonder, is this all? Is there more to life than just files and meetings? Last Tuesday was a rainy day. The sky was gray and I felt a little bit sad. I was sitting at my desk typing a report when the mailman came into the office. He dropped a stack of letters on my desk. Most of them were bills or boring business letters, but one envelope looked different. It was a thick yellow envelope. It looked very old. My name, Emily, was written on the front in beautiful, curly handwriting. There was no return address and no stamp. Someone had dropped it off by hand. I felt a little nervous, but also excited. I carefully opened the envelope. Inside, I didn't find a letter. Instead, I found two things: a very old, shiny silver key, a small, hand-drawn map of a village I didn't recognize. At the bottom of the map, there was a short note. It said, "Emily, you are 32 now. It is time to find what was lost. Follow the map to the blue house. The key will open the truth." I looked at the silver key in my hand. It felt cold and heavy. My heart started to beat fast. I didn't know who sent this or what the blue house was, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was starting an adventure. I closed my computer, took my coat, and decided right then I wasn't going to stay in this office today. I left the office quickly, my heart still racing. I got into my car and looked at the hand-drawn map. The village on the map was called Oakwood. It was about 2 hours away from the city. I didn't tell my boss where I was going. I just knew I had to follow this mystery. As I drove, the tall buildings and noisy traffic of the city began to disappear. The scenery changed to green hills and tall trees. The air felt fresh and cool. I realized that as a 32-year-old woman, I had spent so much time working that I had forgotten how beautiful the world outside the city was. After 2 hours, I saw a sign, "Welcome to Oakwood." It was a tiny village with stone paths and small shops. I slowed down and followed the lines on the map. I crossed an old wooden bridge and turned left near a giant oak tree. Finally, I saw it. At the end of a quiet lane stood a small house. It wasn't just any house. It was painted a bright, beautiful sky blue. The garden was full of wildflowers and there was a white wooden fence around it. The house looked like it was waiting for me. It looked peaceful, but it also looked like it held a lot of secrets. I parked my car and walked toward the front door. My hands were shaking a little. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the silver key. My mind was full of questions. Who lived here? Why was I sent this map? What is inside? I stood in front of the blue door. I put the key into the lock. It fit perfectly. I turned the key, and with a soft click, the door opened. I stepped inside the house, and the smell of old books and dried lavender filled the air. The house was very quiet, but it didn't feel scary. It felt warm, like a hug from an old friend. Most of the furniture was covered in white sheets, and dust danced in the sunlight coming through the windows. I walked through the small living room and the kitchen. Everything was frozen in time. On the wall, I saw a small framed photograph. I wiped away the dust and gasped. It was a photo of a young woman who looked exactly like me, holding a small baby. Behind her was this very same blue house. "This is my mother," I whispered. My mother had passed away when I was very young, and I didn't have many memories of her. I remembered the note. "The key will open the truth." But the silver key was still in my hand. I had already used it to open the front door. Was there something else? I looked around and noticed a small wooden ladder leading up to the attic. I climbed the ladder carefully. The attic was small and filled with boxes. In the corner, I saw a beautiful wooden chest with a silver lock. My heart skipped a beat. I knelt down and put the silver key into the lock of the chest. Click. The chest opened. Inside, there were dozens of letters all addressed to me. They were dated for every year of my life, one for my 10th birthday, one for my 18th, and a very thick one labeled for Emily, age 32. I opened the thick envelope. It wasn't just a letter. It was a legal document. It said that this house and the large field behind it belonged to me. My mother had saved it for me until I was old enough to understand the value of a peaceful life. Along with the papers, there was a beautiful sapphire necklace that sparkled in the dim light. I sat on the floor of the attic and cried, not because I was sad, but because I finally felt connected to my past. I wasn't just a woman with a boring office job anymore. I had a history, a home, and a choice to make. I stayed in the attic for a long time, reading the letters my mother had left for me. By the time I walked back down the ladder, the sun was starting to set, turning the sky a beautiful orange and pink. I looked at the blue house with new eyes. This wasn't just a building, it was a gift. I realized that at 32, I was at the perfect age to start over. I had enough experience to be wise, but I was still young enough to chase a new dream. I didn't want to go back to my gray office or my boring desk. I wanted to wake up to the sound of birds and the smell of the garden. Over the next few months, I made big changes. I quit my job in the city. I moved my things into the blue house. I started fixing the garden, planting roses and vegetables. The most amazing thing happened. I discovered that I loved to write. In the quiet of the village, I began to write stories about my life, the silver key, and the mother I was finally getting to know through her letters. I turned one of the small rooms into a bright studio. Instead of typing boring reports, I was now writing books that made people happy. One afternoon, a neighbor stopped by with a basket of fresh bread. "Welcome to Oakwood, Emily," he said with a kind smile. "We are happy you are here." For the first time in my life, I felt like I truly belonged somewhere. I stood on my porch, wearing the sapphire necklace my mother had left for me. I looked at the green hills and the quiet lane. My life was no longer a routine. It was a beautiful story that I was writing myself. The mystery of the silver key had led me home. I was Emily, I was 32, and I was finally truly happy. I hope you loved your story, Emily. It was a beautiful journey from that boring office to your new blue house. I hope you enjoyed my story. If you liked it, please subscribe and join me for the next one. See you soon.